Welcome back to Caffeine Confessionals. My name is Allan, and today we're here to talk about the Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras Episode 1 recap. Finally here, Season 40. I'm joined by my lovely co-host. We have the Southern Luke Muncie.
What's up, guys?
And back from a remote island, we have rejoining us the Vermontian Zoe Trimboli.
Hi, everyone.
Zoe, we missed you last week while talking about episode 0, which, as we talked about last week, probably should have been labeled episode 1. What were your thoughts on that little episode 0 launch special?
I have to say first, I was like giggling watching the episode back when you guys were talking about me being on the island because it was not luxurious by any means, but it was lovely. But yeah, there's outhouses involved, and it was all sorts of fun. I loved this episode. It had me all in the feels. I actually immediately went back to season 10 and started watching old seasons back because I was just like so in my challenge feels. Honestly, it's probably for the best that I wasn't here to talk about it with you guys because I would have been an emotional wreck trying to talk about CT and DM. Like that scene took my breath away. You talked about this too. I like that they gave Derek his little moment talking about, and I was just thinking about all these cast members who all had this like profound relationship with her, and all the lives that she touched, and I just thought it was a good reminder of why we grew to love this show in spite of its many quirks and flaws in certain ways. I loved seeing the women get their flowers. I thought the Cara Amanda conversation absolutely blew my mind. My jaw hit the floor when those two were basically when they were burying the hatchet.
Right.
Yeah, it was just exciting. All of it was just so exciting.
It was supposed to be a 30-minute podcast between me and Luke, and we talked like almost twice as long as the actual episode happened. It's why I'm mad it wasn't episode 1 because we'd go into this episode and they just throw us kind of right into the action with like no exposition. Like we just kind of really get thrown into it. Like episode 0 was such required viewing, and like I still love this episode a lot, but it would have been better as a 2-part thing.
People have to watch the launch special to not feel like it's jarring if you jump into episode 1 without watching the launch special. It is available now on YouTube. MTV put it on their YouTube, so you can just watch it directly on there, but it's absolutely required viewing for this season.
Yeah.
We jump into episode 1. They all come off a bus. TJ introduces us to all the eras, which if you did watch episode 0, you're like, okay, era 1, era 2, era 3, era 4, here are all the faces, here are all the names. But it's a lot to take in at once. TJ's entrance, though, really cool. They got the exploding waterfall. I don't like explosions on the show typically, but I thought this one was actually really pretty and nice. And then just seeing the emotions on all the players' faces was surreal.
Yeah. I think all the budget from 39 went into this fireworks show. That's why we could have 2 champs. But yeah, it was cool, but I'm going to echo back. I rewatched the episode last night. It is like we just jumped right in. It's like, wait, there was nothing to got us in. And I'm pretty sure Avery got the first confessional, which baffled me. But yeah, it was cute.
I just appreciate like the gratitude of everyone there. They just seem so grateful to be there and grateful to be part of it. And I just was getting these like little doses of reminding me why I love some of these people so much. Like I got so excited to see Katie, especially when she was talking about her little vacation. Like there's just it's a dynamite cast. Like I'm so excited.
CT being the first person to cry on this season was not on my bingo card. And we talked about this last week where like CT is like very much in his feels right now, where he's been going through a lot of life stuff, and like being part of season 40, like it means something to him.
Yeah, and I said last week, but I like that he can embrace that and say like this is kind of a steady for me. He doesn't have to become this character, this character. He can just be CT, no matter if that's like super loud and obnoxious one season and super confident another, and maybe this one maybe a little bit weaker and more vulnerable. I'm a big fan. He's somebody I'm not going to ever get tired of, or at least I've not yet. So I loved it.
What growth? Like, it is unreal to think about how much CT has grown as a person on this show. Um, it's beautiful. I love watching men cry in appropriate circumstances. Not Josh does it a little too much for me sometimes, but I still love him. There's something about like, especially a hyper masculine man like CT getting emotional that I think is just, it's beautiful.
Want to move into the stakes now?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
So TJ throws down the gauntlet immediately. He says, "All right, there's 40 of you. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. We got to cut you down. We got to trim the fat immediately. So what we're gonna do is daily challenge. You're all competing against your eras. First place is safe. Last place, you're all directly going into like last place within your era, both man and woman is going directly into elimination. We're gonna have an elimination after this, four different ones, like men and women. 8 people getting eliminated one day, and instantly people are shitting their pants.
Me included as a viewer. I love it and I hate it. I hate a purge off the bat. Like Dirty 30, that was one of their biggest mistakes. I mean, a cast of 30 could have been just fine. I understand that 40 is big, but someone, a guy and a girl from each team, is inevitably going to go. I wanted to see them work together and see those dynamics. And I'm just fearful about who would go. I mean, we see later, we'll talk about that later, but I'm glad that they at least have the chance to go into elimination to salvage themselves. But I don't know. It's like, why bring out 40 people if right off the bat, 8 are going to go?
Yeah, I understand logistically why it makes sense. Like, if you're planning on doing some sort of like purge because the cast is so large, it makes sense to do it while the numbers are even and it's not putting any team at like a direct disadvantage in that purge. But I agree. I wanted to spend a little bit more time with them, even if it like if they'd done some sort of challenge just to win like a perk, right? Like they would do a throwback sort of thing. They win cash, they win their choice of choosing their bedroom, like something so silly. It would have been nice to see these teams work together just for one challenge. But I get why they had to do it. We all complain about the seasons going on way too long because things start to drag. So whatever. But I would have liked to see them work together just once before they were thrown into this challenge.
I love All Stars because I love the smaller cast. I like that we don't have to like deal with just too many people and you forget who's there and stuff like that. And I love this because like Luke, I'm with you. I hated that dirty 30 purge, especially because it felt very random at times and like who you got on your team was very like kind of like luck based almost. And like it didn't feel like the best way to purge. Yeah, they had the redemption house, but overall, like we lost Amanda, we lost Darrell to that, and like that really hurt the season. This purge though, it's like you're on your own. If you come in last place, you still have an opportunity in elimination. So at least it comes down to your own merit and you're fighting, and like you know what, that's going to lead to some good television, and then people only being able to, as we saw, like select within a group of like 3 people to go like to vote into elimination immediately creates conflict, immediately creates beef. I like stakes matter, and like you couldn't look away this entire daily challenge, which I tune out during some daily challenges, especially on Battle for a New Champion when like a lot of them didn't matter. There's no punishment for last. This one, stakes fucking mattered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love when coming in last place has a direct ramification on your game. Like there needs to be consequences for doing poorly. It makes everything make more sense in terms of eliminations, how people get there. Like they've got to crack the code to this. They have to keep this going. Like there has to be some sort of punishment if you suck.
I agree. I hope it sticks around this season. We'll see because we know they love a format change. But yeah, it was an interesting daily. And I'm not going to take back that I hate it because I also said that I love it. I love that the stakes matter because one of the biggest complaints from the three of us for the past several years to this point is it doesn't matter. You're either first or you're not. So this was cool. Almost makes you want to be second though, given the stakes, because I feel like being first puts a huge target on your back as well. I know like you have safety for 1 week, but you have to make a really big decision that could piss off a lot of people. But I don't know.
I think it depends on who you are and what your team is. Like, I think there's some, I because you're only choosing between three of the people, and there's all these relationships, and there's like, frankly, some people that you don't really need to be worried about. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how the game shakes out and like what the actual challenges end up being. Because if they're back to just working together as a team, I would have a hard time believing someone's going to be like, well, Laurel voted me into that first elimination, so like, see you
Right.
bye.
Yeah, that's true.
Does you want to explain the daily challenge, or is it on me?
We can.
Yeah.
They've got to solve a puzzle that makes a 40. And once they've done that, they have to go out in like this circular raft type thing and hit 4 lights because there's
10.
100 lights. Okay, 10. And then come back with the pegs from the lights and then put them in the board and they'll all light up.
Light bright.
Light bright. Devin should be great at this.
Yeah, the boat looked like half a coconut shell. It did not do, some people did not do well in this. It did not look easy to paddle that thing. Some people made it look easy and some people made it look impossible.
Yeah. Well, I went kayaking after I watched it, and I was like, "This is so easy." And I'm like, "But I'm also in a vessel that has points on the front and the back. It's not a circle." So like, it's one of those moments where from home I'm like, "What an idiot!" But in reality, it's probably super difficult.
Especially in the dark. I do like the visuals of the night challenge with all the lights out in the water and stuff. I thought it was actually kind of cool, and I bet it was kind of intense for them. I mean, poor Kara struggled to even find her puzzle at the beginning because I think that was part of it, was just finding your station to start.
Right.
Looking back, that might have been a big difference actually, like in the way things played out. Want to jump right into like how people did?
Yeah,
Sure.
let's do it.
Take it away.
All right, we're gonna kick off with era 2, and I'll be honest, I actually so it's a little bit messed up in the edit, but I did a general like note taking of who was finishing, like in what order. Some of it might not be actually like what happened in that order. Um, but the first two very clearly like women to finish their puzzle and just get in those boats were Laurel and Cara Maria. And some people were talking about like, oh, All Stars 4 was the Laurel and Cara story. I hope it's not the same way on season 40. Could not even last 15 minutes before that happened. Laurel was done with her puzzle so fast, and Cara was on her ass after. Laurel ends up being first overall out of everyone. Cara comes in second and gets nothing for it, despite beating 38 other players in 20 minutes.
They were back, and a lot of people were still working on their puzzles. Like, I cannot give these women enough credit. Like, that, it was cool watching Cara finish first in All Stars, and then watching these two finish first in this challenge to open up the show, especially after Rachel's toast, was just like, could not have written it better. I think in a weird turn of events for me personally, I would have written it that Cara beat Laurel, but like, you cannot even begin to tell me that these women are just not phenomenal. Like, so impressive, so cool, so badass.
Yeah, I wish Cara had won. And I get it. But I want to see Laurel spiral with Cara beating her at something.
She
She
spiraled
would.
even coming in second. She was being weird.
I can't believe that. Yeah, I don't know. I also think that I have lots of thoughts. We'll delve into them throughout the season. I don't want to get too deep into it right now.
Great performance by both of them. And also, Kara did set the table in her confessionals where she says, "Look, my goal is to beat Laurel." Like just straight up, she just put it like on the table right there. She's not like mincing words. She's not saying like, "Oh, I just want to do the best I can." Like, no, no, no. I want to beat Laurel. I want to beat her. I'm tired of like coming in second to her. So this, her. I mean, I would love to see Kara win, but we just did see her win the first challenge of All Stars. So
Yeah. I mean, I will say I will give the same critique I gave Laurel. I think part of Laurel's motivation was to beat Kara. I think it's a little bit weird for Kara to say that, but I can at least appreciate that she's being forthcoming that like, hey, I've got a chip on my shoulder. I'm not going to act like this person doesn't phase me. She does.
I mean, it goes both ways.
Right. I just don't think Laurel would ever admit that Kara phases her or she sees her as a threat.
I mean, she did talk a lot about in those confessionals about wanting like that she just can't get rid of her. She tries to get rid of her. She stays around like that this Cara Maria Laurel storyline isn't going anywhere. Like it's here to stay. But
Yeah.
kudos to them. I wish we could see 2 men going home from Era 2.
a pretty decent. I agree. A pretty decent amount of time after Bananas finishes in first place for his era. The women then finish pretty soon after that. I think Aviv comes in third, and then the way it was edited seemed like Kellyanne and Emily were basically having a photo finish, with Emily barely saving herself. In fourth, Kellyanne comes in last place, and Kellyanne goes over to the other women and goes, "I wish I was competing against the men," because you could see Brandon, Nehemiah, Ryan still in their boats, not even close to being done. That is the strength of the Era 2 ladies.
Yeah. I really wish 2 men could be going home from Era 2. Like, and I'm sure Bananas feels exactly the same way.
Yeah.
They have just as much brute strength as some of those guys out there, like flopping around in those boats.
If Kellyanne had barely edged out Emily because they were right there, the concept of Emily going into the first elimination against a Cara, that would be pay-per-view viewing. That would just be like all eyeballs. I mean, people were watching already, but that would be an event.
Yeah, or they could throw in Aviv and they could do Hall Brawl. See how that works.
Aviv is jacked.
Oh.
I like the fitness of these. I think we're supposed to talk about the men at this point, but the fitness of the women on Era 2, it's just actually unreal.
Like, who would you say is the least fit?
I don't think there is a least fit. You could say,
like, like I couldn't.
Kelly,
I think it's Laurel.
I would say it's probably Laurel, actually.
She's the most. She's one of the most athletic. She's the least
Yeah.
fit. I see.
Yeah. I definitely like that's the biggest, like, because if he works as a personal trainer and like a health coach and stuff like that, Kellyanne is, I mean,
Pilates,
literally
yoga,
like,
holistic lifestyle.
Yeah. Such a the women are so strong. It became a battle of futility between Brandon and Ryan, with Ryan coming in last place. Not the biggest shocker. It was between those 2 men.
It is what we expected. That is the 40th draft pick of this season for a reason.
I was going to say next. I don't care about the Era 2 men at all.
So let's move into Era 1, which was after Laurel and Cara. Clearly, the next best performer in this daily challenge was CT. He solved his puzzles super fast. And throughout the episode, we got all these moments of like breaking the fourth wall of like, oh, CT pro tip here, CT pro tip here. Guys, did you like it, or was it just too corny?
I hated it. The first time it happened, I was like, oh, okay, they did this on, a couple other seasons. I think Josh versus Jordan, they did it, and they did it one other time. Had they done it once, sure. It happened so many times in this episode. I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is really corny.
I will actually like it more if they keep it up throughout the season. Because then it's like a bit, and I'm totally here for it. If it dies after this episode, I'm gonna be really disappointed. It had me regretting that I didn't draft him though, because that's like those are gonna be confessional counts if they keep it up.
I
So
know.
I
I
think we got 4 CT pro tips this episode. At least 3. We got at least 3. Like it was.
Yeah.
I think he's just become this like dad figure, and I think it kind of works. But again, I want them to keep the bit going.
I told Luke last week we need the CT spinoff series of him just doing these corny dad stuff. Like, there's a market out there for it because here's the thing: I know Luke hated it, but there's a lot of people out there who are gonna be eating that up.
Oh, for sure. But it's easy for me to hate a lot of people on the show. I think with what I said when we first started this, CT doesn't seem gimmicky and like characterized for me. As much as it would be fun, I think it would do it for me. And I'm not the average viewer. I totally understand. But I hate a gimmick. I hate a gimmick.
And I do want to note they did do that with the Jordan Josh elimination, like you said, but then they also did it for the CT Josh elimination, which the fact they did it for 2 Josh eliminations is just like it's a bad sign when your opponent is talking mid elimination, making fun of you.
Yeah.
This
So
one was
we're
big for CT though. Like, because you look at Era 1, Mark, Derek, Brad, Darrell, those guys are all like day one homies. So if anyone needed the win, it was CT to like get safety, hold power, clutch win.
Do you think that there would be an element of some of those guys fearing blowback from fans if they were to vote CT into the first elimination?
Yes,
There's a
I
couple
think
names that come into mind. Yeah.
I think Derek. I think Mark would. I do not think Brad or Darrell would.
I don't think so
No.
either. That's my exact thought.
Yeah. I think Brad would actually be more fearful of CT getting him back, but not of like the fans. But those 4 guys are literally like day one. Like they do all the challenge mania stuff together. Like they're like all stars homies. They like never go against each other's back. Like they're thick as thieves. CT getting the win is big, and then Rachel I think was like the right behind them too. Rachel crushed this challenge, gets the win. That's no surprise. I think we all expected Rachel to kill this. The bigger surprise is that I have is like the person who finished 5th overall out of everyone, Tina. And it was especially shocking as they like tried to make fun of Tina at one point during this daily challenge for almost falling out of her boat.
Tina killed it.
Y'all heard me on
And
All Stars. I said I think she's more athletic than we think.
so, and I'm watching back, I just watched back Fresh Meat. And I don't want to go into a sidebar, but like watching back that season, it's atrocious the way people talk about Tina and like her body and her athleticism, because she is like a size 4 or 6 at most and like doing things really well. But she does surprise me because I'm like in my head, there's this narrative that's been created that Tina was kind of a flop competitor, and I don't think that she was. I think that sometimes just the women around her were really, really good. Um, I was so hyped for her to come in second in this challenge for the women. I thought she killed it. She looks fantastic. I'm rooting for her.
So Tina was bad at finals. She just didn't really have a ton of cardio back in the day. That was like the big knock on her. Like she really died in the Inferno 2 final. But on like Inferno 2, Battle of the Sexes, etc., she was always like really good at the daily challenges. Really just kind of had like a fearless mindset. And when she came on All Stars, I was like shocked because I was like, was I just watching the show wrong? Because she really just, I mean, like she would have some really bad performances on All Stars 3, All Star like some like awful performances. she's actually in good shape now. I just saw her this past weekend, and Tina is looking like phenomenal. She pointed at
Here,
Rachel, like when people complimented her, like, and it's like, so she's been on the Rachel fitness stuff. And so she, like, that is the difference of like, she probably is in the best shape of her life right now. And once you got that going, like performance is coming in too.
I dare I say Tina looks the best she's ever looked in her life. Like
Oh,
she
absolutely.
looks so good.
Cosign.
Let's go back to the Arrow One men real quick because honestly, most of them, actually, Brad did pretty well. Brad came in just behind them, which is a great showing because I mean, I was very worried about Brad after All Stars 4 and Battle for a New Champion. Good to see him do well. All right, no pause for Brad. All right.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this is gonna sound so negative, but I'm sitting here thinking maybe this is why we need to purge 8 people out from the get-go. Because I'm like, there's a lot of people doing these dailies. And I'm like forgetting and not really like caring to speak about some of them. Like, go Brad.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, they're just going to start rolling in, right? Brad did very well compared to the rest of the men on the team.
Yeah. Derek finished somewhere in the middle of the pack of like the whole big group of people. Good for him. You know, puzzles can be hard for him sometimes, so good for him. And then it became down to Darrell and Mark, who both really struggled in this. Mark comes in last, and having to face 6'3" Mark Long in elimination is very scary for those three men.
Yeah. I guess depending on what elimination it is, but I agree.
Well, and you have to assume that they're not going to choose stupid eliminations for this big like gauntlet they're throwing down of this like purge. You have to assume some of those headbangers are coming into play, which in previews we see that they do. But like, yeah, I would not want to face Mark in anything physical, and especially knowing that CT is not on the chopping block.
Right.
And Mark is also just so good at the carnival games too, because he's been doing these for like 50 years. Like he's experienced, and he's not like he goes into those eliminations with zero nerves because this is all just like fun for him. Unlike some of these other people who are like shitting bricks in elimination. Also for the women, let's just jump into the last place finisher because Katie. I agree with Zoe. I love the Katie confessional. Like, oh, this is going to be a nice little vacation. I think she looks gorgeous in her confessional. But this daily challenge performance, it's up there for some, like maybe the worst all time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think she was a cool grab, but you had people in confessionals. It might have been this episode or last episode saying like she's not here to actually play. It's kind of a bummer because I know there were a lot of women from that era that would have. I'm happy to see her back. It's cool for nostalgia purposes. That's probably going to be my only major concern with this season is that it's going to rely on nostalgia for a long time, and that can wear off quickly. I'm hopeful that I'm wrong, and I think I'm going to be, but it just sucked.
My heart broke for her a little bit when she was crying to Tina in the boat and just saying she just didn't want to embarrass herself. I felt so bad for her, and it made me remember how often she had trouble with a lot of challenges because she's so little, and I think like not athletic. She's small and she's not very athletic, and yeah, getting beat by Anissa always sucks. Um, and yeah, she just couldn't do it. It was just a bummer. Really, because she felt so embarrassed by it. That's what made me sad for her. Because like there were some other people who put out some really embarrassing performances who had twice her height and muscle mass and athletic ability. So like in the scheme of things, knowing what we've seen Katie do, I don't think she needed to be that embarrassed because she performed kind of in a sense what we expect her to perform, whereas some of these other people really were pathetic.
Yeah.
Anissa was very bad in this daily challenge as well. Just Katie was worse, and that is the, you know, the Arrow One women. I hate to say it, are very much the era two men of this side of the cast.
But not even that bad, I would say. Like
Yeah.
at least
Well, if Tina's this good, if Tina like can be like this level, then much better than expected.
because Jody's there and Jody's going to be good at things.
Yeah.
And it's so funny we forgot about Jodie completely. She's great, but she flies under the radar, which could be great for her game.
She's got a great singing voice.
I think we should move on.
Let's move into the era 3 competitors. Tori comes in first place for the women. John A had a pretty solid performance in second. Tori coming in first is, I think, kind of expected. I mean, she is probably the strongest woman in her era, right? Right?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And John A coming in second feels right too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would have been more interesting had Tori not won, potentially. But yeah, it makes sense that she did. I would have actually been really surprised if she'd lost. Yeah. We talked. Well, I was just gonna say, they're watching this era 3 women. I'll try not to say it all season long, but having Naya and Avery in this group when there should clearly be a combination of 2 of the 3 of Ashley, Kayla, and Nani, like 2 of those 3 should be in their place. It just sucked because like I just am not as invested in them. And you have such huge storied people that are not in this group that should be there. Ugh.
Yeah, and I think this is just my bias coming through, so I'm going to be honest about that. But when we talked about like it'd be interesting if Tori hadn't won, I think this first daily could be interesting too if only the loser went in and the winner didn't get such great power, but instead the team voted who went in. That would also cause drama, but not keep the winner completely safe. I understand there needs to be some incentive to winning, but Tori winning expected, but also really annoying.
And we'll say why. We'll just say why. Amanda did not win this daily challenge. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not like we were expecting her to. But with Tori winning and Amanda losing, it just you feel like you know that's going to be the vote going on. And as we saw in episode 0, like Amanda brings a star power to this show where like she doesn't win a lot, but she has people pressed. She just brings storylines.
They did shockingly bad on the puzzle.
Her, Devin, and Polly, who are 3 people I would say are elite puzzle players, all struggled on this puzzle, and it was really weird because like there were some people who did really well, and then like these good puzzle players just weren't putting it together.
They could have used a couple CT pro tips, I think.
I disagree. I want to point out too, though, Amanda did not win, but she did not get last. Last
No,
vote
she
being Naya.
Naya.
Which I go back to. I wish there was different people for in era 3 women.
I kept saying the stat on what was it, All Stars, whatever, that like Naya was just never finishing top 3 in a daily challenge. Even when there was 4 people left, she didn't finish top 3. And once again, we had a 5-person challenge. She's not finished top 3 in her era. That's indicative of who she is in daily challenges.
I'm chiming in here too, and it's so unrelated, but needs to be said, I feel, by me and maybe just for me. I think part of why I hate this as well is because I wanted to see which team was going to be most dominant. And this doesn't allow for there to be a losing team. Like they really could have ran teams an entire season and just purged out 2 people and done doubles every episode, like a man and a woman. I just hate the idea that we're going to lose a guy and a girl from each era. I get it logistically, but in my brain, it does not help us decide who is the best era. Because as a collective, that's not what's happening here.
The way you say that, Luke, I just came up with like an idea from that. If they had this all going on, and let's just say instead of 8 players, 6 players are getting purged, and the best team overall in this daily challenge is all that whole era is just safe. So even if you come in last in your era, if your whole team is like the best overall team, you guys are all safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Save 2 people. that we otherwise would not. I don't know. I get it. I do. Feeding, housing, all that is a lot, I'm sure, but I hate it. Let's move to the men before I get stuck on that tangent.
Yeah, and so Corey, I'm not gonna lie. He first started talking about doing puzzles with his kids, and I was so ready to tweet out. Here's Corey practicing puzzle with Ryder. She beats him most of the time. Sometimes she lets him win. Um, Corey proved me wrong immediately because he killed that puzzle, killed this daily challenge, and got the win. Which like that's all I've been asking for Corey to do for like a decade now. Is like, hey, work on your puzzles, work on your puzzles. If he's doing that, then like Corey might actually be a threat to win this season.
I would love it.
And it's kind of, I think, a must win for Corey. Not necessarily, but given who came in last, because I think there is one person on Era 3 that's the least likable and least desirable to keep around, but he's like next man on the chopping block, I think. So I think it was a really important win for him.
Yeah, and I'm curious if he's the person to have gotten second place the most without ever winning. I know Laurel's
Without
gotten
ever
second
winning?
a lot, but she's won. He's gotten
Yeah,
second
without ever winning,
a
it's
lot.
probably him.
Yeah.
And he would have even come in like total madness. He came in third technically, but he would have been in second, and he just kind of gave up once like bananas crossed the finish line.
Right.
So like Corey, yeah, you're right. He probably has that record. And I mean, I kind of wrote him off as a guy who could win just based on like his inability with puzzles because he's improved his cardio a ton. That would be huge. I like to see it too, just because like I like seeing growth on this show, and I agree with you. Like Devin, if he had gotten power, would have definitely thrown him in. Tony, if he gotten power, would have definitely thrown him in. These Era 3 men actually really struggled as a whole because it was Tony, Leroy, and Devin all at the bottom. Tony was trying. He kept doing reverse fours and kept trying to force it in, asking for checks every 3 seconds.
That 4, do you know what a 4 looks like? And even if you didn't, do you know what a cohesive puzzle looks like?
What have you seen
Genuinely.
that looks like that ever? Like when people do those, I haven't figured out exactly what dog breed he is. Of like, when people do those things.
The ones that are like overbred to the point they have no mental capacity.
Yeah, it's like he's a dumb breed of dog. So I'd be really curious if there's people who know things about that to chime in, because God, it was painful watching him make that non-4 so many times with no understanding that it was wrong, like really adamantly believed it was correct.
Throwing his hands up, being like, what? It's like, that's not a 4, that's a figure. I want to give props to Devin.
That's actually something I want to talk about because Devin, his boat was literally had a hole in it and it sank in the floor, and people just thought he died. People assumed he was dead. An hour later, his body comes out of the water. He has his 10 plugs and he just swam the entire distance, which I will say, like, should that be legal? It should, yes, but I don't know. It's like because the goal of the challenge was you did have to row your boat. Like it wasn't you could swim, but it was badass at the same time.
The pro tip was that stay in the boat. It's there for a reason. I literally wrote down in my notes watching this episode, Devin drowned. Like, because he just, the image of him, bubbles coming up on the screen. The image of Devin like crawling up onto the shore is something that I'm going to play for myself in my mind over and over again, like anytime I'm having a bad day, because like it really encapsulated this show in so many ways, like that people are so desperate to do well but look like idiots half the time. Like
And he's a cigarette smoker too, and so he's literally coughing up his lung and his cigarette smoke, like, as he's getting to shore, and people are complimenting him, and he's just dying, but he's like, "I just can't come in last place."
Yeah.
Oh, so funny.
But in last place.
Leroy, he can't row a boat at all. It was really sad. I want to say this: Jordan also did badly in this challenge too, but everyone else in his team was, I mean, Devin drowned and didn't
Yeah.
didn't come in last. So that was the bar.
And I think once Jordan got into his boat, it's like, okay, he's gonna be fine because he's so athletic. Like he'll figure out a way to finish this before these people. Leroy should have stayed retired. He's just embarrassing himself at this point.
I think I've said it too much. Whoever from Survivor said the legacy only matters to fans, not to me. To them, it's just a check. And for that, I give him props. I hate to say that he threw this just to have a short stint, but his baby was born 8 days before he went out there. Like, I could see him being like, I got my check. I'm here. I'm probably not going to be number one out of these 20 guys. What am I doing?
That's fair, actually. That is a great assessment because do you think he did that badly on purpose though?
No, but it gives me a glimmer that like maybe he's not as disappointing as this showing was, and that he really is being a family man, collecting his check and going back.
It's one of those tough things because he's not really great in the water as a whole, and he's not really great with puzzles. So it's like him coming in last is not that shocking when you put those two things together. But I think he can do better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's kayaked a lot of times in the show. It's not kayaking, but something similar. So that was how the men went on that side, and then era 4. Let's talk about who came in first for the women, and that was Michelle. Which I don't know if anyone on that cast needed a win more because you looked at those 4 other women, and if Michelle didn't get that win, I think she would have been a very like that. Everyone else would have been like, that's the person I want to face in elimination. So Michelle getting that win, yielding power, clutch.
She also has that like reputation of being a snake too. So all the things combined, Michelle would have been going into the elimination if she didn't win. So I was super super impressed. Actually think Era 4 as a whole did the best in this challenge. I like made a little star next to them while I was watching it because I think like some of these eras were so far from finishing and they had already determined like their male female winner loser during that point.
Yeah. Jenny was right on Michelle's ass. Really good performance. Behind her was actually Olivia and then Casey. Nerys solved her puzzle pretty fast and then just couldn't row the boat at all.
Yeah, unbiased take. She shit the bed. Love Nerys, but like,
Oh, as the Nerys fan club here, this was painful. Nerys is just so hopeless in water. It's really, I need her to like move closer to water and just become a fish because she said herself when she was getting out, like it was embarrassing. Horacio tried to make her feel better. No, she's right. It was embarrassing. I felt genuinely bad for her, especially because again, she's coming in with all this like earned hype, and then to just do so poorly in this challenge, it made me sad as a Nerys fan because I just wanted her to kill it, and she just didn't drown but came close to it.
yeah, and I don't think any of us are saying that this erases like all the
No.
love we have for her. My fear is that I'm gonna get on Twitter while the episode's airing, and people are gonna be like, "The People's Champ, really? Like the female champ?" Like they're gonna really dig into her because people on social media, well, Twitter at least, like to do that. Uh, I think it was just a bad showing.
She's just bad in water. She's bad.
I need people to know that if you love Nerys, you are buying into an imperfect competitor. She is a
Oh.
badass. I love her, but she is not a dominant force. And she's a strong player. She deserved to win a championship last season. But Cara was the same way with water for years. Ashley Mitchell, there's just certain things where like she's gonna lose, like straight up in certain types of
For
challenges.
timber.
Yeah. Nerys is like she's got a slender frame, she's not good in water, certain things she's just not going to be good at. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be a fan of her because she is awesome and badass. But it's not like you're buying, it's not like you're buying Prime CT. It's just,
Yeah.
still awesome. Horacio won on the men's side. I think Kylan did pretty well also on the men's side. Josh did well. I mean, that was him not coming in last was huge for his game because he would have been shitting bricks. And then it came down to Paulie and Theo. Paulie, of all these people, really needed this win, and he struggled in the puzzle. Something that I thought was very curious was that near the end, Cara was kind of helping him in the water, and we kind of saw with Katie, we kind of saw with other people. Should that have been legal? Like, could keep helping other people like actually grab their stuff, put it in? Like, I don't know. Especially like because last place goes into elimination. Like, I feel like that should just be all on your own.
I wonder if just with that many people in the water with the lighting, if it was just logistically impossible for them to police every single person. So like, I agree. I don't think it should have been legal, but Theo was just kind of spinning around out there in his little half a coconut too. So I don't know that it mattered. Um,
And Cara had been done for 4 days, so she was probably ready to go home.
Laura had twice. Anytime these guys were finishing.
Yeah. Not a good look for Polly and Theo either, especially with them like making their resurgence onto the main show.
I think for those two guys too, like anytime, and I don't agree with this because I think that he is a decent competitor, but I think losing to Josh really does something to a man's ego. I think Josh is solid, so you're not gonna hear it from me, but I bet even more specifically for Polly that one stung a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
I
Theo
know.
came
I'm
in last
exhausted.
place.
Theo, yeah.
No. Theo came in last place, and same thing we said about Mark Long, having to face a 6'5" man in elimination is a terrifying prospect for some of these people.
Yeah, like former, not like Olympic sprinter, right? But like
Professional sprinter,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like he went to the World Championships on one of the years they didn't hold the Olympics type thing.
Yeah.
It's
He came in 7th place.
It's pretty impressive, especially when you're like some of these other guys. I mean, I know Polly was going to be on the Olympic bobsled team, but
Was. Anywho, so we have our last place people. Okay, for era
Yep.
1, it is Katie and Mark Long. For era 2, it is Ryan and Kellyanne. Why did I give Mark Long's last name? It's like his full moniker now.
Yeah. You got to say the full name every time.
Era 3 is Leroy and Naya, and era 4 is Nerys and Theo. Initially, if these 8 were purged, that makes my heart hurt. Just from like a drama standpoint, storyline standpoint. This is why I had so much trepidation at the beginning of the episode, because this is scary. Not to mention who they could possibly go up against, who could also be a bigger loss in the grand scheme. Which brings us to deliberation.
Yeah. We had a little bit of a 10-minute like house portion where people are politicking, like talking like, oh, who are you going to throw in? Who are you going to throw in? That blends into the deliberations. We're going to jump straight into era 1. And before we even get to the actual deliberations, we said Derek has a conversation with CT about who to throw in. And CT first said, like, okay, if there were 2 people, like 3 people representing our era, it would be me, you, and Darrell. And then CT says, but is Darrell washed? Like he actually had, like he says kind of the words, like, is Darrell like not as good anymore? Is he just coasting on reputation? Based on all these scenes, like with CT and Darrell, they seem super close. So him telling this to Derek really just stunned me.
Yeah, but Darrell does look just like out of it. Like his face just looks like sullen. I think CT's saying that as Darrell's friend, but also someone who wants to win the season. So like, if you're going to be dead weight, if you're not in this, like, let's trim the fat. I mean, it's very muscular fat, but like,
I think it's also a testament to the fact that there isn't a lot of fat to trim on their men's side.
right.
Like when I think, yeah, Darrell didn't look good, but it's one thing, one time. We all know that Darrell's a very capable competitor. Um, I think that they're all solid. And I think had Brad not done so well in this challenge, the conversation would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
There's going to be like so many people upset that CT insinuated that Darrell is like weak or like past his prime. And then there's also going to be a lot of people who, because they like treat CT's words as the Bible, are going to be like, is Darrell washed? Like, it's going to like really start that conversation, which is just like a crazy thing, like a crazy thing, like in a world to live in.
Yeah. I also want to mention before we like get into the like formal deliberation, this could be my bias playing through. Amanda was having conversations with everybody except for who really mattered, but she was like talking to everybody. It was like there was a scene. Oh, here's Amanda. Here she is with Kellyanne. Here she is with Bananas. Here she is with Laurel and Casey. Here she is with some other woman. But like she was everywhere.
Miss Congeniality.
And I don't know if you peeped Kyland. I told Allan that in episode 0, like I saw them in the pool. I saw them like at the bar together, like making some contact. In this episode, he like made some like gestures at her and like whatever. I'm like, is this gonna brew into something?
Hey, kudos to him because everyone should be hitting on Amanda.
Yeah.
Miss Congeniality or just Miss Mess? Because I think she likes the idea of like, oh, so who's getting voted in here? Who's getting voted? She just wants to be all part of all the messes and just see it all unravel. We also saw like some talk back with everyone on the women's side where Anissa assumed because Rachel was in power and they dated many years ago that like she would be saved. Well, Rachel's much closer with Tina, and CT is part of this vote. So Jody's really good at the challenge, and she's strong as hell.
And I don't know if Anissa knows this. She's really bad at the challenge.
Every time she talks, I sometimes I know we're really hard on her, and I'm are we like, are we out of touch? Are we being too mean? And then she gets back on my screen and she says some dumb shit like this, and I'm like, no, that's why I can't stand her. Because not only is she bad at the challenge, she is bad at the challenge, but she has absolutely no self-awareness. And I have a hard time believing these words coming out of her mouth she actually believes. Like she's looking into a camera saying, Rachel will have my back over Tina's and Jody's, who will actually help our team. Like she's saying it with a straight face. So either she really believes what she's saying, or she's completely fake and is just playing into this like character type of like, oh, I deserve my win. I got to get my win. Also, I want to backtrack. At one point, Leroy said something about Anissa being the best player to never win. And him losing that challenge so miserably was his karma for that statement, because that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Sorry.
I was also about to say, like, when Luke was talking about Leroy, I was like, you know what, Zoe, I agree. He should have stayed retired if he's gonna say shit like that on this show. It was bullshit. And also Anissa said, like, oh, I just really want to get an elimination win so I could take the record from Kara. I'm at 13. How many eliminations have I competed in? Like 22. And someone in the producer's like 26, which means she's 13 and 13. It's not like she's like dominating elimination. She's like 50%, and in the last, like, since the duel 2, she's like 6 and 12.
And even if her and Kara were both 13 and 13, which they are not, Kara would still be far more impressive because she's a 2-time champ and has made it to X amount of finals and can actually do things worthwhile. Like she has mistaken her role on the show. I thought she knew it, that it was like, I'm the friend, I'm going to help these people. I can do some things really well because I'm not going to knock her completely, but she really feels like this is the season that she can win.
She also lost to Kara head to head in a physical elimination in which she had, what, at least 50 pounds on her? That's being
Yes.
generous, I think. Like just I can't. I'm so glad she said it though, because I really was beginning to think I was mean. And I don't think I'm mean. I think she's just completely delusional.
It's Vacation Alliance entitlement too, and she's not playing
Yeah.
with the Vacation Alliance. It's like these are people from your era. They're well aware of what you can do, and that's why Rachel was like, "Yeah, CT, you take over the vote."
So it's funny you say that about all her friends. They put out promo yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever it was, about like, what era are you in? And Anissa was like, I'm in my winter era. All my friends are in the winter circle, and I really feel like this is my season to join them. I'm like, you have lost your mind. Maybe if they stayed 4 teams until the end and eras 2, 3, and 4 all forfeited, but like, hello? Like, I just anyways, can we move past her?
can't.
She makes my blood boil.
I could spiral about this for a long time.
I did laugh when she's like, "Oh, CT usually throws me into elimination." That's because CT is the most aware of your abilities. He's seen it for 2 decades.
Even at your most fit, you weren't good at this shit.
Damn.
Let's move. I gotta go.
Derek actually does volunteer for Darrell to go in to face Mark. And Derek alludes to like Darrell's done stuff for me in my life when like other people haven't. Should I say the thing? Should I say something? It's not like a okay. So
Do it.
apologies to these people's family members, but apparently they had to shut down filming for 3 to 4 days during Fresh Meat 1 because Darrell and Derek went to party in Australia with some people, and literally they were just gone for 4 days, and they were just doing some crazy partying. So they shut down production literally for. That's how the challenge used to be. They took a car into the city, were just partying for 4 days. Like Darrell and Derek go way back, and then they've done a million of these challenge media type stuff. Darrell's always been a person who's like, I'll come out, I'll come do this. So they do have a real bond and friendship.
Yeah. And I'd actually heard that as well. So I thought you were gonna be like, so and so hit a body. I was like, don't say that. Edit that out. I get it, and I don't care, to be honest, because in the deliberation specifically is when Darrell just looked like he was a shell of a human. And I'm like, this is the game. And I hate to say this as well. Derek and Mark are even closer. I could totally see Mark being like, go in, be the hero, face me. You're going to win. I'm going to let you win. And I'll see you on the other side, buddy. Like, and it
Yeah,
might
Mark
just be, yeah.
heading deals too. Like that's Mark. Mark does that. He writes the script for the show, so to speak, sometimes. So yeah, I could see that.
And
I
Derek
think.
maybe felt he. Oh, go.
No, go ahead.
I would say Derek maybe felt he needed a moment after the way he kind of chickened out of calling out Wes on All Stars 3. So like putting his like his game on the line here was like a moment of like courage.
Yeah.
That's
I would
valid.
agree with that. Yeah.
Moving to era 2,
Let's do it.
and I think this was far and away the juiciest deliberation. Cara versus Laurel, and Laurel was an absolute praying mantis in this deliberation where she kept waiting for Cara to say the wrong thing. That's all she was doing. She was waiting to pounce and attack her for the moment she did, and Cara did not. Cara just spoke freely, honestly, confidently, and even when Johnny Bananas said, like, "Hey, what if you were on this side of the couch?" And Cara says, "That's a hypothetical. We're here right now." She didn't fall for the trap. Like, I thought it was a veteran move, and it's just like I thought Cara held herself well.
Agree completely. I have a different take. I feel like that's where her argument kind of fell apart because she could have placated them and been like, I wouldn't be throwing you in. Like, I want to have a strong team. That would bite her in the ass if later on down the line, but like, it would also save you a week. Like,
It's an important week. You don't know what's going to happen after this and how people are getting eliminated. So you want to keep your team strong.
yeah.
I also don't think placating would work with those two people because they would just be like, yeah, sure, that's like a load of bullshit. Like if you were here, you would just throw us in. I think her just saying the idea you're doing is basically trying to trap me, and I'm not going to acknowledge it. And I think like an old Cara would have just like really just leaned into whatever they did. But I think the way she did, like the way she just kind of like kept eye contact the whole time, I thought it was badass. Like this version of Cara Maria is the one we saw in All Stars 4 take over some deliberation. She's continued it on here. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I was impressed with how poised she was, because it would have been really easy to fall into that trap, to like revert to some of those emotional ways, because you get back in the same rooms with the same people and old habits can come out. And especially at one point, the way Johnny's looking at her, he just like, I don't, maybe it triggered something in me, because I was like, this man clearly still has some resentment for her, because he was just, I think just as much as Laurel was waiting for her to say something that he didn't like, and she handled it well. It's disappointing too. Maybe again, this is editing. I'm sure other people said things, but like it was all on her to defend herself, when it's like you're looking at two other people who haven't done this shit in over a decade. Like, I don't care how fit they are. There is a benefit to having someone that has all that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think one of the other flaws, as much as we're very much Team Cara now, which is crazy, it appealed to Laurel, but it definitely was kind of like a smack in the face to Johnny, is her being like, listen, if this were just the top two people, I'd be making this decision. While I don't even know if that helps her case with Laurel, because if I'm Johnny, I'm going to be like, oh, so you're saying that you're better than me. She was in this daily. We know that he's a narcissist with a huge ego. And I don't think like inflating her power like helped her case with Laurel. I don't know. I like that we have different interpretations because that's how a show is supposed to be. But I think that you're right, and that this is a nuanced Cara that we've not seen before. And for that, I'm very happy. And she didn't cower once.
Yeah, and I
I thought
think,
John.
well, I was just gonna say, I don't think there is a different way she could have really handled it that would benefit her more. I think,
I think the placating, but like again, like you guys said, it would fall flat after that.
yeah, yeah.
I thought Bananas was actually like very impressed by Kara in this scene because he kind of had like a little grin at times where he's like, oh, she doesn't fall for like the usual Johnny Bananas traps. These that we've talked about Kara and like Laurel is the greatest like rivalry in challenge history. I also tweeted that Bananas and Kara is the best male female rivalry in challenge history, and those are the two people controlling the votes. Because these two, I mean, they were at each other's necks for a decade, and then they were friends for a little bit. But then the last season they were on World of Worlds 2. Cara and Polly threw Bananas in against Theo. So we know Johnny's petty. He eye for an eye.
Always.
Men's side, very easy, because Ryan doesn't want to face his best friend Derek. Laurel is close with Derek, and Nehemiah is very clearly the second strongest man on that team. So it's got to be Brandon.
Which Brandon was surprised by, which I had to roll my eyes at. I thought that was so silly, but whatever.
I want more out of him because I think that we all were in agreement that after All Stars 4, it's like, okay, cool. Like he's got some dynamics here. We didn't see any of them like thus far. And he performed poorly.
Yeah, I mean that All Stars 4 male cast was so weak, and now it's just like very apparent seeing him on this cast where it's like he's doesn't really stand out in any way.
Yeah.
The good news is one of Brandon and Ryan will be gone next week. So
Well, maybe we don't know the whatever, but it seems pretty clear cut. You're exactly right.
moving on to Era 4, which had a lot of juice to it as well. Nerys, she's talking about who she wants to face in elimination, and she's like, well, I don't want to face Casey because she's the most all around. And I think that's correct. Casey is like been pretty dominant in eliminations, so I wouldn't want to face her in elimination. So then it's now between Jenny and Olivia, and that's between a rock and
a boulder.
As long as yeah. Because Olivia's definitely not a bad competitor, and I think a lot of people were like lying last season when they said she was after she betrayed Horacio. I saw a lot of people saying she was carried. No, I watched a lot of those daily challenges. Olivia was pretty good in them on Ride or Dies, and then she destroyed Raven in that hall brawl. Raven couldn't wear her shoes, but that's besides the point. Um, Olivia's not bad, and so now that's what it comes down to. Nerys asked for Olivia in elimination, and Michelle pretty fairly goes, "Well, wait, that's my best friend."
I love Michelle Waterworks, honestly. It's just like something you can always count on happening season to season. So I'm grateful that she's just getting it out of the gate, like crying first episode.
Here's what I did not understand about all of this. She told Horacio he could control the girls' vote because his number one was on the line. Olivia is Michelle's number one, and she said that. I'm just curious why she was so like quick to let him make that call. And if it's it because she feels guilty about how things played out the season prior, it didn't really fall on her as much as it did Olivia. Like, why would you not stick up for Olivia more, I guess?
She was trying to compare Horacio and Reese's connection to hers and Olivia's, and I was like, it's not the same, honey. Like, Olivia's your number one because she's here and other people aren't here. That's the only reason she's your quote unquote number one this season. Don't compare the connection you have with her to theirs. It's just not the same thing.
And I
Um, the
guess
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and this just hit me. I guess it wouldn't really matter because her fear is if her and Horacio have different votes and they come to a stalemate, she'll be going in. So realistically, it's either I'm going in or Horacio gets to pick. And any chance that would happen, I would just give up my vote.
I can't believe Michelle cried. I mean, I can believe it, but if you had like live betting odds, like the chances of her crying in that episode were like very high going in. But then after she won the daily challenge, it's just like those odds shifted. Like because like there's no way she's gonna cry. She won the daily challenge. She's in power. There's no way it's gonna happen. Nope, still cried. And it's so on brand. But yeah, I really don't know what the hell is going on with Era 4, where they're just kind of letting the people who didn't win just like run shit. Because I think Josh's name should have been more up in the air for elimination. I don't think they should like
I think it's a self-preservation thing, right? If we put it in the hands of the people going in, then they're looking down the road like we were saying earlier, like, oh, someone could maybe hold this against me. And that's much more likely in this very emotionally charged era 4 that someone will hold it against you. So I think if you say, hey, person in the elimination gets to choose, it's a very passive way of still getting the outcome that maybe you want without the blame.
Yeah. And I think too, in specifically referencing Polly and Theo, both of them had their pseudo return on World Championship in USA too, and both sucked, like got lots of criticism. I halfway feel like they're like, well, let's ramp it up. Let's ramp up this rivalry without realizing that if that's the vote, one of you's going. Like, you should really want to make Josh the person going in. But I love that him and Colin were sitting there like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
They're like in sync reactions to things were it was a little much for me, but it was also funny. I like that we got to show the moment that Polly kissed Theo during their fight. I'm glad that came back onto my screen because that was hilarious then, and it's still hilarious now.
Yeah.
I hope they kiss in their elimination against each other.
this episode is what we like a reminder of what we were missing on season 39, 38, where they cast all these rookies and international people. It's like, no, we bring us people who have a shared history because they're bringing up War of the Worlds 2 stuff. It's been years, but like they're acting like it happened yesterday, and that's the continued storylines that we like to see. I was a little confused though, because when Paulie and Theo were both banned from the challenge, they were really posting each other a lot, hyping each other up, like, oh, they don't want us to come back and dominate the show type stuff. So I was just really confused that they hate each other again now. Like Luke said, it kind of seems like a preseason storyline that they came in with.
Yeah.
And they both have the personality to do that. Like that's very much both of their MOs. Theo knowing that he looked so boring on World Championship, and Paulie just still wanting to like recreate the name for himself that he had before he was exiled. Yeah, it's very contrived, but it's fine because I like Josh and it protects him.
Yeah.
I really think Paulie being in that game would have been much better for Horacio and Kyland. And I don't think, I mean, it's literally what Theo said, where he's like, if I go in against Paulie, if I go in against Josh, they'll have the numbers to control the game. And that was a lack of foresight by them, but it's also like Horacio doesn't play the game politically or strategically like that. And the person who would do that for him, Nerys, is just emotional because she just came in last in a daily challenge and she's worried about her elimination.
Yeah. They saved the best deliberation for last, in my opinion, or at least the most intriguing. Air 3. Throughout this episode, we had Tony going to Corey and being like, listen, do you want to beat the best or get the best out and be the best at the end? And honestly, it's a no-brainer for somebody like Corey. You want to be the best at the end. I love Tony self-deprecating and being like, it should be Jordan. Put Jordan in now. Leroy is not a horrible player. Like, take your shot.
I thought it was so stupid. I think Tony's such a doofus. But I think it's stupid because we don't know how this game is going to be played. You do not get rid of your strongest player right off the bat. Like, if you guys have any chance of not completely being decimated, look how horrendously you did in that opening challenge. You need Jordan to get you a few weeks down the road because you will fall apart without him. He is by far your strongest player. It isn't close. I think he's by far the strongest male on this cast, and it isn't close. Like, you are not good enough as a team to get rid of him in the beginning.
I agree, but I don't see a world where Corey puts in Devin, and the only other option then is Tony. So it's like,
Oh, I get his play, but I think it's stupid.
Tony had to try. I think the person who's dumb here is Corey for even eliciting a response to Tony. Because you know what my response would be? I'd be like, look to the person to my right. Look to the person to my right. Is she putting in her ride or die Devin? Is she putting in her former fiance? That's 50% of the vote. Sorry, buddy, you're in.
yeah. And also, Allan and I talked about this last week. You got me banned from this show for 2 years. I think it was the smartest thing that Tony could do, but I'll tack on that doesn't make it very smart. Like, if you're Corey, you know it's the obvious answer. Like Zoe said, it's dumb to keep Tony.
And it's funny, too, because, like, Corey said he's Tony's rival, but Tori winning it sealed Tony's fate more than anything.
100%. Yeah, I'm not a fan also, so, like,
Hey, talking about sealing your fate, though, how about our girl Amanda Garcia? She's like, I didn't like you before this. I'm not gonna like you after. None of this. Like, she didn't even. No plea. No bargaining.
I have thoughts about this. She had mentioned in the last episode 0, and this episode that her and Corey were likely working together, alluding to a conversation beforehand that they did not have friends on the cast like others. When they get in there and he's like, I need to hear a reason. She spoke really confidently, almost like, okay, you're going to have my back. Like, we're doing this. We're here for our friend Nelson. When he was like, I'm going to need a little bit more than Nelly T. And you can tell on her face, too, she was like, okay, Corey, we're both, she said outlanders. She meant outliers. But like, we need people. And we talked before this podcast filmed. Amanda, I really wish she did have a little bit of fakeness to her, but also I'm glad she doesn't. I was glad that she told Tori, I'm not going to ever like you. And I thought, just like Tony didn't have a great plea, Amanda did her best. We have similar friends here. And by me being here, I can keep them safe. And by proxy, they keep you safe, which I thought was smart. My biggest complaint, though, is Devin has had confessionals the past 2 episodes saying the worst thing for his game is to have Amanda go. why are you not going to your ride or die and saying, listen, I know you have beef. I think this could benefit us. There's someone here who's not connected to anybody. Avery, let's get her out.
I also think the other angle, and maybe this is going on in the background, not here. I think Amanda brings something to this team that they don't have. I think like her mental capacity and her ability to do puzzles. And I think also the fact that she's never going to be dead weight because she's not hard to carry around, frankly. Like, I think that she is a much better asset to their team as a whole compared to Avery or Naya, frankly. Um and like I I think Tori's just like jealous of her. I wanted to there's ratings aspects of it too. Like Amanda just makes you more interesting simply by existing. Like
I was talking to my friend Alex, who we know, about like the possibilities going into this. And even if Tori hates Amanda, gets lawyers involved, all that, I think at some point you do have to self produce a little bit. This is your rival. It's like all those seasons where Bananas and West were like, you're really going to take the shot this early. It wasn't that they were like baffled that they hated each other. It was like, I'm kind of your like main ticket to be on the show and get these confessionals. And if Tori and Amanda are going to be rivals, Tori can wipe Amanda in just about anything. Unbiased opinion here. Why not keep her around? Like, it, Avery is the obvious choice in my opinion, especially, well, Corey doesn't know her at all.
and that was Avery's pitch. Like take the time to get to know me. Like that's the best you have. That's the best your pitch. Like I'm not even really sure what I can do, but let's find out together. Like
She was on Rivals 3 for, I guess, all of like 2 seconds. But like, if it's Amanda, I'm very disappointed.
I also expect it, but I will be disappointed.
I expect it as well. I think it ties more into what you're saying. Like, if we had, well, that would be a whole different story. If Ashley and Nani were there in place of, well, who knows who would have won the daily then? I don't know. It just is a universe that I'd like to explore, maybe not live in, but like explore.
If Ashley and Nani are there, I think there's a good chance that John A goes in.
Oh, I forget that Johnny's there. John, I agree. I think John A has the best ploy to Tori though, as she is calm as can be, and she's a two-time champ.
She's a well-rounded player. She's an asset to the team. Whatever. We don't need to go down the alternate timeline route. I'm happy to off the podcast, but like,
Right.
yeah.
I love Amanda. I really don't want to see her go. But I just do love her feeling. I don't like you then. I don't like you now. It's just she remains consistent. Yeah, it would really hurt to know. Like, I spent all those years wanting Avery on the show, and now I'm going to lose Amanda for it. What's that? What's that?
Yeah, it feels
It's bullshit.
like really kind of karma, you know?
Yeah. There's some really bad outcomes that could come from these 8 potential matchups that we're speculating. And that's not to say they're all going to come to fruition, because there could be some things that we're not expecting. But there is a dire path that comes from these eliminations. If you're a listener who's unspoiled, I want you to really consider the ramifications of some of these people going from this season. And we'll just have to see next week.
Yeah, the chances that we lose like a handful of genuinely awesome women in the first week really bums me out.
Next week's going to be great because 4 eliminations. The best part of every episode for me is an elimination.
8 eliminations, right?
Oh, 8 eliminations. My bad. 8 eliminations. So 8. I think eliminations are the best part of every episode. So now we're just getting 8 of them all tomorrow. It's just like a highlight clip. Just 8 highlights, and that's all we're gonna be talking about next week. Eliminations, eliminations, eliminations.
I'm scared this is going to drive away some viewers in some sense, because it's going to just be like, I don't see how in 90 minutes it can't just be the eliminations, but then we'll reset the week after. A lot of logistical things here, but I'm excited nonetheless.
Anything else we gotta say before we end up this episode?
No, just can't wait for the next one.
I'm so upset they called this a 2-part premiere, but it's like 1 week apart. And it's like, no, that's just episode 1 and 2. That's not a 2-part premiere. Give me both episodes at once because I will watch them both.
And realistically, it's going to be a 3-part premiere. Like,
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, follow on Twitter. Have a great weekend, everyone. Season 40 is here, and it's already off to a great start.